Hey YouTube, Joyboy here. So, chapter 892 of One Piece is out. So if you haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so because I will be spoiling you. But now that you have, let's begin. Leave it to Oda to take a very serious moment and then turn it into what was mostly comedy. I was a huge fan of this chapter. This was kind of like a nostalgic chapter. It reminded me of feelings that I felt in the past when it came to Sanji and his character, how carefree he is. You know, it's one of those things that should be obvious, like, well, what is Sanji going to do when he sees Nami again? But it's not obvious, but it is obvious. But you know, if I were to actually attempt to define the chapter, to me, it was a chapter of reflection. And I know that might rub some people the wrong way. They're ready for the story to progress, not to talk about or re-emphasize things that have already occurred, or explain more in depth what is currently occurring. But I personally think Oda did it in a very tasteful way. We'll start off with Sanji. Sanji hasn't seen what's been going on with the crew for the last several hours. They don't know exactly what he's doing, and he doesn't know exactly what's happened to them. Specifically, he doesn't know what happened to Pedro. I thought it was really interesting in this chapter that Brook decided to lie to him. I'm like, maybe Oda just wanted to put off a moment of feels for the sake of this chapter, or maybe it will have some importance later. In addition to this, Sanji learned for the first time that the ship itself got wrecked. I honestly think that this is going to become an important point when we get back into Wano, specifically with Frankie. This could have story implications in the future if they need to repair the ship. Adam's wood may grow on a tree, but just the one tree. There's only one tree in the entire world which produces the wood that the Sunny is made out of. So I don't think that Oda is emphasizing this for no reason. And Oda even took a moment to gloat over Jinbei, again reminding us, yo, Jinbei's here to stay. He's part of the crew, and the man does work. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for Jinbei. But we also got reflection from the Big Mom Pirate, specifically Sparrow, in this last chapter. Damned if you do, and damned if you don't. I think it's a fair assumption that Capone poisoned the cake. I wouldn't hold that against him for thinking that. So if you let Big Mom eat this cake, then she could potentially get poisoned and die. But at the same time, if she doesn't eat the cake, everyone dies anyway. So perhaps Sparrow or the other Big Mom Pirates could attempt to destroy this cake. But is that really the right decision? Is it worth the risk? I think that's a really interesting question. I mean, we're not rooting for them per se, but what they will do in the future matters. But it seems as though the reflection kind of started and stopped there, because Sparrow seems to have come to a conclusion. There is no way that Capone isn't going to attempt to kill Big Mom. So they are continuing after Capone. Maybe Sparrow understands that they haven't poisoned the cake and they will attempt to do something afterwards. We can't be certain. But for Capone and the rest of his crew, this is not a good situation. Especially given the implication that they will attempt to kill Big Mom after they feed her this cake. Honestly, it's just really confusing. Like, I really don't know what Capone plans on doing, because it seems like he contradicted himself in this chapter. Right, we're supposed to feed Big Mom this cake, but afterwards we can do whatever we like, right, Sanji? But then he goes on to sort of have this moment with Chiffon. Just believe in the cake. Are we believing in it because it will be able to placate Big Mom, or are we believing in it because it'll be able to knock out Big Mom, giving us a chance to strike? It's really ambiguous, but I think I would lean more towards Capone being more talk here than actually having intentions of killing Big Mom afterwards. I'm not sure how exactly he would intend on doing that, but obviously time will tell. The only real speculation that I have, and guys, this was a meme theory. This is a theory that I ignored on multiple points in time and still probably would ignore even as I'm theorizing it, as far as like it ending up being the way that people speculated it. But a lot of people have been saying, you know, what if Big Mom fell into the ocean? Capone only intends to feed Big Mom this cake. What happens afterwards is of no concern to him. You convince Sanji that you're going to this island where it'll be safe for her to eat the cake, but oh look, Big Mom got the cake in the middle of the ocean and just sort of like fell in. I couldn't stop it. And even if Capone doesn't intend to do this, and he really is all talk, this is something that could happen regardless of what Capone wants. If Big Mom manages to catch up to them before she reaches the island and eats the cake again, pretty much in the middle of the sea where she falls over, it leaves room for shenanigans to happen. But of course, I've said this throughout the arc, and I'll say it again here. Now, Of course, Big Mom will not die by falling into the ocean, but it could be a very interesting turn of events that could lead to unexpected things occurring. The most curious thing about this to me is that if there's anything that's consistent about the Big Mom pirates, it's that pretty much every single one of them have devil fruit abilities. If somebody falls into the ocean, none of the Big Mom pirates can jump in to save her, because they would also drown. A lot of people are mad about how Oda has been treating Big Mom. She's a Yonko, she should be hyped up, not continually made out to be some kind of joke, but this would just be the icing on the cake. Just to see the rage from the community, it would make it worth it for me. And the last thing that I want to say about this entire situation is Sanji emphasized it again in this last chapter. They're not really sure what will happen to Big Mom once she eats this cake. I've stood by this and I will continue to stand by this. I think that I've come to expect of Oda that in situations like this, we should expect the unexpected. If things just go straight forward, Big Mom eats a cake, she falls asleep, and then Capone runs away, I'm not certain how exciting that would be. You obviously have to wait and read it, but as for now, I hope that some interesting twist is included, whatever it might be. But going back to the strats on the Sunny, they're now heading back towards Cocoa Island, and so we finally have the full understanding of why the time of 1 a.m. was important. Drop the cake off, head back to Cocoa Island, meet with Luffy. Sounds pretty simple, but inevitably it won't be. As for now, they are chased by Smoothie, and I'm pretty sure that's a lot of Sanji fans, or just people in general, will be speculating that Sanji will take on Smoothie. That will be his huge fight. I don't think so. Aside from Smoothie being a woman, a mightily thick woman at that, she's also a sweet commander. Maybe I don't have enough respect for Sanji, but I don't see him taking on a sweet commander. A lot of people have argued that it's time for Sanji to grow, that not hitting women doesn't do you any good. It's not the moral high ground if you're sacrificing potentially your friends and your family's lives. And while I do agree with the concept, it doesn't really seem to be Oda's not setting that up right now. If Sanji in the future will fight a woman, I don't see it happening now. But honestly, if you think in this way, it's kind of disappointing because you specifically have Smoothie chasing the strats. If Sanji's really not going to participate in any meaningful way in this fight, then what really is Smoothie going to do? What danger does she pose to the ship? Seems like a legit question right now. But I'm pretty certain that things will heat up if and when they arrive in Cocoa Island, because the setup at the end of this chapter could not have been any more clear. Oven has told them to essentially destroy every mirror in Cocoa Island except for one, in the off chance that Luffy manages to defeat Katakuri and come to Cocoa Island. The feat of getting Luffy out of there, specifically at the end of this chapter, which we'll talk about a little bit more in just a second, when he got his injury. They may have momentarily escaped Big Mom, but the difficulty level has not really decreased. And while we're talking about Oven for just a moment, there was lots of speculation, right, that maybe something had happened to Oven to prevent him from killing Pound, but as we see in this last chapter, Oven is completely fine. A lot of people are taking this as confirmation that Pound is in fact dead. I will forever remain a skeptic, but the number of possible options that could have gotten Pound out of this situation, or that may in the future get him out of this situation, are decreasing. If Oven had the intent of killing Pound, and he's fine now, then Oven would have killed Pound. So all we're left is Oven had a moment of indecision, of sympathy, and he chose not to kill Pound. And maybe, slash something else, and that's what the plot that we heard. I'm not saying that this is likely, only that it's possible. Or that Pound, despite being dead, literally has to be brought back to life in some way that is not typical in One Piece. Honestly, right now, it is becoming incredibly difficult, or more difficult, to believe that Pound will be alive. And honestly, I think that this is a positive. You'll see me arguing here that yes, I do think Pound will come back to life because of the precedent of the One Piece story. Oda, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. But what I want is, I want Pound's death to have significance. I want him to stay dead. Pound is a character who can die in the story and have his moment. That was his moment. Completely fine with that. If Oda has started to make the New World actually have the kinds of stakes that we thought that it would, then I'm a fan. But let's go back to these strats on the Sunny, because I think one of the most curious things of this chapter wasn't entirely obvious. As you guys will remember, Sanji was on Capone's ship and ended up traveling to his own ship via Pudding's carpet. And once he arrived on the ship, Pudding left. We don't know where Pudding went. What Pudding will do next will undoubtedly be shown to us. It'll have some relevance. But before she left, she got to see Sanji and Nami. We speculated this, we noticed this earlier in the arc, but to think that Pudding might become jealous of how Sanji treats Nami or what their relationship might be, she wouldn't really know. I honestly think that Oda's going there. Oda specifically made Nami hug Sanji. She never does that. Sanji said, "I like you too, Nami," out loud. You think that Pudding heard that? I bet she did. This is one of those things that absolutely has to happen at some point in the future of this arc. We need resolution between Pudding and Sanji. That story needs to finish. And if I'm honest, guys, right now I feel sorry for Pudding. I know that is a blasphemous thing to say, but you know, Pudding doesn't have a lot of self-confidence. She doesn't think that she is beautiful. I think for a moment that she thought that Sanji did think that she was beautiful. But unlike every other girl in the entire story, Sanji has for the most part ignored her. But now she sees the interaction between Nami and Sanji, and I think that the only thing that she can assume is that, you know, maybe they're a thing. Maybe the one person in the world who thought that I was beautiful is already taken. It's kind of sad just to think about. And finally, let's talk about Katakuri versus Luffy. And so guys, I'm not sure what you think, but people on the forums were very divided as to whether or not they were okay with Luffy having or nearing upon catching up to Katakuri's observation haki abilities with only a few hours of training. But I personally am not bothered. As I've said previously, I think that this ability has been foreshadowed, Luffy having this ability has been foreshadowed since before he even mastered regular observation haki. And nearly every power-up in the entirety of One Piece is just something that is randomly acquired. It's what people would call plot convenience. Luffy needs to get stronger. Oh look, now he's learned something new. I would honestly argue that this particular power-up has had more setup than 99% of all of the power-ups in the story. So you can't really argue that it's an ass pull that Luffy would be able to acquire it, in comparison to all the other things that you have accepted and enjoyed. Just the way that it looks to me, guys, is that this power-up was necessary, and it might, you know, be at an expert level power, and it might require Luffy to train when typically he would just sort of have an epiphany. But here Oda is saying, no Luffy, I will force you to grow here at Whole Cake Island, because you absolutely need it in order to be relevant in the next arc. But anyway, going back to what actually occurred in the chapter, a lot of people were wondering after the last chapter, what was the purpose of introducing Charlotte Flambe? A lot of people thought that it was irrelevant. It's too late in the arc to be introducing characters that Oda's not going to do anything with. And I'm sitting here thinking, Oda doesn't introduce irrelevant characters. She will do something. Unfortunately for my patience, Oda decided to make her do something in the very next chapter. Flambe might be the person responsible for essentially Katakuri defeating Luffy. Flambe is Katakuri's plot armor. Just as the going gets tough and Katakuri begins to think to himself, man, I might not win this fight, of course, Flambe comes in to save her elder brother's skin. Shoots an arrow in Luffy's leg, allowing Katakuri to hit him. The big debate here is whether or not what we saw was what actually occurred, or what we saw was what Luffy was seeing in his mind. Luffy, with his future sight haki, perceived this as being the future, and so he's going to act to change it. I'm really uncertain. But if Luffy now has a huge hole through his body, that's something that seems noteworthy. I mean, there's a lot of injuries that at first look bad, but then don't end up being as bad as they initially looked. But this one looks pretty fucking bad. But regardless of this injury, even if Luffy ends up losing to Katakuri, I don't think that he is defeated quite yet. Because the biggest question that we have is that if Katakuri is able to defeat Luffy, then how will Luffy ever make it out of the Mirror World? Seriously guys, what I'm wondering right now is that given that Flambe intervened in their fight, maybe Katakuri does something. Like, this isn't how I was supposed to go. This isn't how I was supposed to defeat you. If I'm completely honest with you, and the injuries that Luffy received are legit, then what this is to me is most consistent with the possibility that we were speculating earlier in the arc that there will not be an actual winner. Oda will write it in such a way so as to force Luffy to not defeat Katakuri or Katakuri to not defeat Luffy. But of course, at this time, many various things are possible, and a lot is possible that we haven't even considered. I'm sure I'm not the only person who really badly wants to know where it goes from here. And I really think that this applies to not only Luffy versus Katakuri, but everything else that's going on in Whole Cake Island right now. And so I think that there's two ways that I'm willing to speculate. On one hand, it goes as is entirely predictable. I hope that this doesn't happen, but of course you can speculate it because it's predictable. Or on the other hand, something absolutely crazy happens that completely changes the game and everything that we thought. That's pretty much where I'm at right now. I don't even want to speculate anything specifically because I'm almost certain, just the feeling on the inside is that I don't know. Hell man, what happened to Zeus? Zeus went on the ship, where did he go? If the Strats are leaving right now and Big Mom's going to the island, then they're taking Zeus with them. You know, Nami's like, I always wanted a magical cloud. Why don't we just take it? That's what pirates do, pirates steal shit. Alright, let's take it and go. But anyway guys, as always, let me know what you think. Let me know if you noticed anything from this chapter that I may have missed. Just share your thoughts. Like the video if you like the video, dislike the video if you dislike the video. Make sure to subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content. And as always guys, have a wonderful day.